The photograph arrived on her phone at 3:47 in the afternoon. Cap and gown, diploma held high, flowers in her arms, smiles everywhere, but not one trace of the woman who'd raised her since she was 4 months old. She stared at that image for 17 minutes without blinking. Then she walked to her home office, opened the bottom drawer of the mahogany desk her late husband had built with his own hands, and pulled out a manila folder she'd hoped never to touch. Inside were documents that would erase a name from every inheritance, every insurance policy, every deed. Her hands didn't shake as she signed the first page. They'd stopped shaking 3 hours earlier when the graduation photos started flooding social media and she realized she hadn't even been told the date. What she did next wasn't revenge. It was something far more complicated than that. Something that would cost both of them everything before it taught them what family actually means. If you want to understand how love can survive erasure, how dignity can demand distance, and how the hardest lesson a heart can teach is when to let go, stay with this story. Leave a like right now if you've ever given everything to someone who forgot to say thank you. Subscribe to this channel because what happened next will challenge everything you believe about unconditional love. Hit that notification bell, because some stories don't just entertain, they rearrange your understanding of forgiveness itself. This is a story about the price of being forgotten by someone you'd die for, and how sometimes the only way to save love is to take it away. What she discovered in the months that followed changed not just her life, but the life of the young woman who'd learned to take her for granted. Because absence, it turns out, teaches what presence never could. And some people only recognize love when they finally feel its weight lift from their shoulders and realize they can't stand without it. She was 29 when she first held a 4-month-old baby who wasn't hers by blood, but would become hers in every way that mattered. The nursery smelled like fresh paint, pale yellow walls, a mobile with cloth stars. She'd chosen everything herself, though she had no idea what she was doing. The baby's father stood in the doorway with that careful expression men wear when they're hoping someone will fix what they can't. His first wife had left 6 weeks after the birth, just walked out one Tuesday morning and never came back. No note, no explanation, just an empty closet and a baby who cried for a mother who was already gone. She wasn't supposed to fall in love with someone else's child. They'd dated for months before he introduced her to the baby. 4 months of coffee shops and long walks where he talked about his late wife with a reverence that made her chest ache. But his grief was different. It was married to hope, to the belief that life could be good again if he just found the right person to help him carry it. The baby had colic. She screamed for hours, tiny face red, fists balled against a world that felt too big and too cold. She learned to swaddle in the dark, learned the difference between a hungry cry and a lonely one. She changed diapers at 3 in the morning while he slept, exhausted from 12-hour factory shifts. She sang lullabies in Portuguese her grandmother had sung during the war. The baby didn't understand the words, but she understood the melody. The promise that someone was there and wouldn't leave. People asked if she was sure. Friends, family, strangers in grocery stores, who saw her struggling with a diaper bag and a screaming infant. "That's not your baby, is it?" they'd say. Voices edged with judgment disguised as concern. "You're so young. You could still have your own." As if love only counted when it came from your own body. As if the sleepless nights and the spit up on her favorite sweater didn't make her a mother in every way that mattered. She married him when the baby was 8 months old. Small ceremony, just family. The baby wore a white dress with tiny embroidered roses. She gurgled and reached for the flowers, and everyone laughed. And for a moment they felt like a real family. Not a patchwork. Not a second chance. Just real. But the word stepmom followed her everywhere. Birthday parties, pediatrician appointments, parent-teacher conferences. "Oh, you're the stepmom," people would say, and there was always a pause after it. As if the title came with an asterisk. As if her love was conditional. Less than. She never corrected anyone. She knew what she was. She woke up every morning and made breakfast. Packed lunches with notes that said, "You're going to do great today." Stayed up late helping with homework, her hand guiding small fingers learning the alphabet. She drove to soccer practice and dance recitals and sleepovers. She wiped away tears after the first heartbreak. She showed up every single day, whether anyone noticed or not. The girl called her by her first name. Always had her father, never pushed it. Let her decide, he'd said. She call you mom when she's ready. But ready never came, and after a while, she stopped hoping for it. She told herself it didn't matter, that love didn't need a title, that being there was enough. But late at night, when the house was quiet, she'd stand in the doorway of the girl's bedroom and watch her breathe. Watch the rise and fall of small shoulders under a cartoon-covered blanket. And she'd wonder if the girl would ever know how much of herself she'd given to someone who would grow up thinking of her as something adjacent to family, close, but not quite. She'd read somewhere that stepmothers in fairy tales were always wicked, always cruel. She wondered who'd written those stories. Wondered if they'd ever loved a child who wasn't theirs. Wondered if they'd ever felt the particular ache of being essential and invisible at the same time. The girl grew. 4 became 6. 6 became 10. 10 became 12. Braces and first periods and friendship drama. She was there for all of it. Not because she had to be, but because love doesn't come with an exit strategy. Her husband used to say she was a saint. She'd laugh and tell him saints didn't burn dinner twice a week or forget to sign permission slips. Saints didn't lie awake wondering if they were doing enough, if the love they gave would ever be returned in equal measure. He was grateful. She knew that. I couldn't do this without you, he'd say, and she'd smile and kiss his cheek. But they both knew he worked long hours, came home tired, fell asleep on the couch most nights before dinner was ready. He loved his daughter fiercely, but love and presence aren't always the same thing. And presence was what she offered. Day after day, year after year, presence without applause. The girl never really said thank you. Oh, she'd say it sometimes, the way kids do when reminded. Thanks for driving me. Polite, automatic, but never the kind that comes from the soul. The kind that says, I see what you've sacrificed. That kind requires perspective, and perspective requires distance. And distance, she would learn years later, is the cruelest teacher of all. She didn't expect gratitude. That's what she told herself. She wasn't keeping score. Love wasn't supposed to be transactional. But somewhere, deep down, beneath the rationalizations and the self-sacrifice, there was a small voice that whispered in the dark. Will she ever see me? Will she ever know? The girl grew into a teenager, moody, distant, testing boundaries. She spent more time in her room, more time with friends, building a life that didn't include the woman who'd raised her. It was normal, the pediatrician said. They pull away. It's part of growing up. Don't take it personally. But how do you not take it personally when you've given someone 15 years of your life and they can't wait to leave? She told herself it was temporary, a phase, that the girl would come back eventually, softer and wiser. She told herself a lot of things in those years. Most of them were lies she needed to believe to keep going. But what came next would test everything she'd built, everything she'd sacrificed. Because love, she was about to learn, doesn't just ask you to give. Sometimes it asks you to become everything when the person who mattered most is suddenly gone. Her husband got sick when the girl was 14. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The kind that doesn't offer second chances or miracle recoveries. Just a slow, brutal countdown to the inevitable. The diagnosis came on a Wednesday in October. She remembers because they'd just carved pumpkins the night before, and the girl had complained about getting seeds under her fingernails. Normal things. The kind of problems you wish you could go back to when real problems arrive. He'd been tired for months, losing weight, brushing it off as stress. But when the pain started, the kind that woke him at night and made him double over, she knew. She made the appointment, drove him to the doctor, held his hand while he pretended to read a magazine he wasn't seeing. The oncologist was kind, too kind. That's how she knew before he even said the words. I'm sorry, he said, and the rest floated somewhere above her head. 6 months, maybe 12 with treatment, no cure, only time, and not much of it. She didn't cry in the office, didn't cry in the car, didn't cry until she was alone in the laundry room that night, folding his shirts, thinking about how many times she'd have left to wash them, thinking about how mundane grief is in the beginning, how it hides in piles of clean clothes and the sound of breathing in the next room that you know won't last. They told the girl on a Sunday, after church, which they rarely attended, but he'd insisted on that morning. She thinks now he was bargaining with God. The girl sat on the couch between them, and he held her hand and said the words as gently as anyone can. I'm sick, very sick. The doctors are going to try to help, but ... double quotes. The girl didn't cry, just stared at him, then at her, then back, waiting for someone to say it was a mistake. When no one did, she stood up and walked to her room and closed the door. She didn't come out until the next morning when she had to go to school, moving through the house like a ghost, pale and silent and unreachable. The treatment started 2 weeks later. Chemotherapy, radiation, clinical trials that promised hope but delivered only side effects. He lost his hair, lost more weight, lost the strength to climb stairs or hold a conversation without getting winded. She watched him shrink, watched the man she'd loved disappear inside a body that was giving up piece by piece. She became everything: nurse, caretaker, advocate. She managed medications, drove him to appointments, helped him to the bathroom when he was too weak to make it alone. But she was also still a mother. The girl still needed meals, still needed rides to school, still needed someone to pretend that life was normal, even when nothing about it was. The girl pulled further away, spent more time at friends' houses, anywhere but home. She didn't ask how her father was doing, didn't sit with him. Maybe it was too much. Maybe she was too young. Maybe watching someone die is something you can't do until you're forced to. She understood, or tried to, but understanding doesn't make it hurt less. 3 months into treatment, he asked her to sit with him. The girl was at a sleepover. The house was quiet. He was lying in their bed, the one that now smelled like antiseptic instead of him. She sat beside him and took his hand, careful not to press too hard. Everything hurt. Promise me, he said, voice barely a whisper. Promise me you'll take care of her. She didn't hesitate. Of course I will. No. He squeezed her hand, stronger than she expected. Really promise me. She's going to need you. More than she knows. More than she admits. You're all she's going to have. The weight of those words settled on her chest, like a stone. You're all she's going to have. Not just a stepmom. All everything. The only parent left. I promise, she said, and she meant it with everything she had. He died on a Thursday in June, 11 months after the diagnosis. Longer than predicted, not long enough. He slipped away in the early morning, the house still dark. She was holding his hand. The girl was in the next room. Finally there after weeks of avoidance, curled on the guest bed, exhausted from crying. She didn't call anyone right away. Just sat there, holding his hand, feeling it grow cold, thinking about all the years they'd been promised and lost. When she finally woke the girl, the sun was coming up. Pink light through the curtains. Birds singing like nothing had changed. The girl looked at her father's body and didn't cry. She'd cried herself empty. She just stood there, small and broken, and said, "What do we do now?" And she realized the question wasn't rhetorical. The girl was really asking, how do we live? How do we keep going? She didn't have an answer. But she wrapped her arms around the girl anyway and held on. Because that's all she knew how to do. Hold on, show up, be there. Even when there were no words. Even when nothing made sense. Even when the person you were holding didn't call you mom, and never would. The funeral was small. People lined up to hug the girl, to say how sorry they were, to tell her how much her father had loved her. They hugged her too, but it was different. Obligatory. She was the widow, but not the mother. The one left behind, but not the one who mattered most. What she minded was the weight of the promise she'd made. The responsibility that was now entirely hers. The life of a teenage girl who'd just lost everything and didn't even know that the woman standing beside her had lost just as much. In the weeks that followed, she learned what it meant to be everything. Mother and father, comforter and disciplinarian. The one who had to be strong even when strength felt impossible. She woke up every morning and made breakfast, drove the girl to school, came home to an empty house that still smelled like him, still felt like him, still ached with his absence. The girl was silent most days, angry others. She slammed doors, skipped meals, stayed out past curfew, testing boundaries, testing her, seeing if this woman who'd always been there would finally leave too. But she didn't leave. She stayed. She enforced rules. She showed up to parent-teacher conferences alone. She sat in the bleachers at soccer games and clapped for a girl who barely looked her way. She did it because she'd promised, because love doesn't quit when it gets hard, because the man she'd loved had trusted her with the thing he loved most, and because somewhere, deep in the exhausted, grieving part of her heart, she still hoped that one day the girl would see her, really see her, not as the woman who married her father, not as the stepmom who stayed out of obligation, but as the person who'd chosen her, who'd loved her, who'd given up everything to make sure she'd be okay. But hope, she was learning, is a dangerous thing to hold on to when you're the only one holding it. The years after his death were the hardest, not because of the grief, though that was heavy enough, but because she had to learn how to be a parent without a partner, without someone to share the decisions or look at across the dinner table and ask, is this normal? Am I doing this right? The girl was 15, then 16, then 17. High school came with its own battles. Boys, grades, college applications, friend drama. She navigated all of it alone, making choices she hoped were right, setting boundaries she prayed weren't too strict or too loose. She paid for SAT prep courses, hired a tutor for calculus when the grades started slipping, drove 2 hours to tour college campuses on weekends, listening to admissions counselors while the girl walked beside her in silence, earbuds in, barely present. Money was tight. His life insurance helped, but it wasn't endless. She worked longer hours, picked up extra shifts, cut back on everything non-essential. New clothes for herself could wait. The girl's needs couldn't. When the acceptance letters arrived, she cried, not in front of the girl, but later, alone, holding the envelope from the state university 3 hours away. Full acceptance, partial scholarship. It was everything they'd worked for, everything he would have wanted. The girl got into her top choice, a school in another city. She'd need housing, meal plans, books, transportation. The numbers swam in her head late at night, adding and subtracting, trying to make it work. She made it work. She always made it work. Took out a parent loan, adjusted her budget, sold the car he'd restored in the garage, the one he'd planned to give to the girl on her 18th birthday. It hurt, but tuition deadlines didn't care about sentiment. She drove the girl to campus in August, 3 hours in a rental truck filled with everything a college freshman needs. She helped carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs in the August heat, sweat dripping, muscles aching, heart aching more. The dorm room was small, cinder block walls, industrial carpet, but the girl's face lit up when she saw it. First real smile in months. She was finally leaving, finally free, finally somewhere that wasn't haunted by her father's ghost. She helped unpack, made the bed, hung clothes, stocked the mini fridge, all the small things mothers do. When it was time to leave, she hugged the girl, held on maybe a second too long. Call me if you need anything. I'm only 3 hours away. The girl nodded. I will. But they both knew she wouldn't. She drove home in silence. 3 hours of highway and her own thoughts. The house felt empty when she walked in. She stood in the doorway of the girl's bedroom, now stripped bare, and wondered what she was supposed to do with all the space, all the time, all the love she'd been pouring into someone who was gone. She called once a week. The girl answered maybe half the time. I'm busy, I'll call you back. She rarely did. Text messages went unanswered for days. She told herself it was normal. College kids are busy, finding themselves, building new lives. But there's normal distance, and there's being forgotten. And she was starting to feel the difference. She kept paying the bills, tuition, housing, books every semester, unexpected fees. She never complained, never mentioned the extra shifts or the vacation she'd canceled. or the retirement fund she'd stopped contributing to. That's what parents do. They sacrifice quietly, without expecting applause. The girl came home for Thanksgiving freshman year. Stayed 3 days, spent most of them sleeping or out with high school friends. They had one dinner together. She'd made the girl's favorite. Lasagna, garlic bread. How's school? She asked. Fine. Making friends? Yeah. Conversation like pulling teeth. Like talking to a stranger who happened to be sitting in her kitchen, eating food she'd cooked, living a life she'd funded. Christmas was the same. The girl came home for 2 weeks but was barely present. Out with friends. Sleeping late. On her phone constantly. They opened gifts. Christmas morning. She'd bought things the girl had mentioned months ago. New laptop bag. Textbooks. Warm coat. Practical things. Needed things. The girl said thank you. Gave her a gift card to a coffee shop. Generic. Something you buy for an acquaintance. Sophomore year, the calls became less frequent. Once every 2 weeks. Then once a month. Then only when tuition was due, or when there was a problem that required money. Broken laptop. Medical bill. Summer housing for an internship. She paid for it all. Wired money. Covered costs. Asked no questions. Junior year, the girl didn't come home for Thanksgiving. I have too much work. I can't afford to miss classes. She ate Thanksgiving dinner alone that year. Turkey sandwich, no point cooking for one person. Christmas junior year, the girl came home for 4 days. 3 of them she had plans. The 4th, she had a cold and slept most of the day. They barely spoke. She started to understand something she'd been avoiding for years. The girl wasn't pulling away because she was busy. She was pulling away because she could. Because all the years of showing up, all the sacrifices, all the love given freely, couldn't change the fundamental truth that she wasn't the mother. She was just the woman who'd been there. Senior year arrived. The girl was applying to graduate schools. Law school. She asked for help with application fees. She provided all of it. Paid all the fees. Wrote letters to professors explaining she was the girl's guardian, not her biological mother, but had raised her since infancy. Guardian. That's what the forms called her. Not mother. Not even stepmother. Just guardian. A placeholder. The girl got into a law school in a different state. Full scholarship. She wouldn't need financial help anymore. She was finally, truly independent. Graduation was in May. The girl called 2 weeks before. I got my graduation tickets. I can have up to 4 guests. Her heart lifted. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was when things changed. I'm giving 2 to my roommate's family. The girl continued. They've been really supportive. And I'm bringing my boyfriend. You haven't met him yet. 2 tickets for strangers. 1 for a boyfriend. That left one. So you'll come, right? Not an invitation, an afterthought. She should have said yes. Should have been grateful for the 1 ticket. But something in her broke. Something that had been bending for years finally snapped. I'll think about it, she said quietly. The call ended. She sat in her kitchen and realized she'd been waiting 18 years for an invitation that should have been automatic. The graduation happened without her. She saw the photos on social media. Cap and gown. Diploma. Flowers. The roommate's parents. The boyfriend. Groups of friends. Not one trace of the woman who'd raised her since she was 4 months old. The photograph arrived on her phone at 3:47 in the afternoon on a Saturday in May. She was folding laundry. Sorting socks. The kind of mindless task you do when you're alone and have nowhere else to be. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She almost didn't look. Almost let it sit there. But something made her pick it up. The image loaded slowly. Cap and gown. Diploma held high. Flowers everywhere. The girl's face radiant, glowing with accomplishment and relief and joy. Behind her, blue sky. In front of her, people she didn't recognize. Friends, strangers, a whole life the girl had built without her. She stared at that photo for a long time. Longer than she should have. Looking for herself in the background. In the crowd. Anywhere. But she wasn't there. Of course she wasn't there. She hadn't been invited. She scrolled through the other photos flooding her feed. Different angles. Different groups. the roommate's parents with their arms around the girl, the boyfriend kissing her cheek, a group shot with what looked like the entire dorm floor, celebration dinners, champagne toasts, laughter. Not one picture included her. Not one caption thanked her. Not one acknowledgement that someone had paid for every semester, every textbook, every opportunity that led to this moment. She sat down at the kitchen table, still holding her phone, still staring, the laundry forgotten in a pile on the couch behind her. This was the moment she'd been working toward for 4 years. 18 years, really, if you counted from the beginning. From the 4-month-old baby with colic. From the promise she'd made to a dying man. From every sacrifice, every extra shift, every choice to put someone else first. And she'd found out about it on social media. Like a distant acquaintance. Like someone who didn't matter. The hurt was physical. A tightness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. A weight pressing down on her shoulders. A stone in her stomach that wouldn't dissolve. This wasn't just disappointment. This was erasure. This was being written out of a story she'd helped write with her own hands. She thought about texting. Congratulations. So proud of you. But what was the point? The girl hadn't thought to tell her the date. Hadn't thought to save her a seat. Hadn't thought about her at all. She thought about calling. But what would she say? Why wasn't I invited? Why didn't you tell me? After everything I've done, after everything I've given, how could you forget me? But she already knew the answer. The girl hadn't forgotten. You can't forget someone you never really saw in the first place. The phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another photo. This time a video. The girl walking across the stage, shaking hands with the dean. Receiving her diploma. The moment every parent waits for. The moment that justifies the sleepless nights, and the sacrifices, and the years of worry. She watched it 3 times. Looking for a sign that the girl had looked for her in the crowd. That she'd noticed her absence. That it mattered. But the girl's face showed only joy. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. No shadow of disappointment. No moment of wondering where the woman who'd raised her was sitting. Because she didn't know. And maybe that was worse than being excluded. Being so completely forgotten that your absence doesn't even register. She set the phone down, face down on the table. Couldn't look at it anymore. Couldn't see the evidence of her own insignificance displayed in high resolution across a screen. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for years, but she'd gotten used to it. Learned to fill the silence with routine and purpose, and the small satisfactions of a life lived for someone else. But now the silence felt different, heavier, like it was showing her something she'd been avoiding. She'd given 18 years. 18 years of showing up. Of being there. Of loving someone who'd never asked to be loved by her. And it had all led here, to a Saturday afternoon in May, sitting alone at a kitchen table, finding out through a screen that the biggest moment of the girl's life had happened without her. She thought about all the graduations she'd attended, kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade, high school, sitting in metal chairs in gymnasiums and auditoriums, clapping when the girl's name was called, taking photos afterward, celebrating accomplishments that felt shared because she'd been part of making them possible. But this one had happened in a different state, with a different audience. And she'd been reduced to a spectator scrolling through other people's photos. The wound wasn't just about missing a ceremony. It was about what the absence represented. Confirmation of what she'd feared all along. That no matter how much she gave, how much she sacrificed, how much she loved, it would never be enough to earn a place that should have been hers from the beginning. She'd been a placeholder, a stand-in, the person who kept things running while the girl grew up and moved on and built a life with people who mattered more because they'd been chosen, not inherited. That night, she didn't sleep. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying 18 years in her mind, looking for the moment it went wrong. The moment she could have done something differently. Said something, asked for something, demanded the recognition she'd never received. But there was no single moment. Just years of small invisibilities adding up to this. Years of being taken for granted, until taking her for granted became the norm. Until her presence was so expected it became background noise. Until her absence didn't even register. By morning, something had shifted. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh, but underneath it was something else, something harder, something that felt like clarity. She got dressed, made coffee, sat at her desk in the home office where she paid bills and managed finances and kept track of everything that kept their lives running. She opened the bottom drawer, the one she rarely touched, and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were documents. Important ones, the ones that outlined what would happen to everything she owned when she died. Property deeds, insurance policies, investment accounts, her will. Every single one of them listed the girl as primary beneficiary. Everything she had, everything she'd worked for, was set to go to someone who couldn't even remember to invite her to her own graduation. Her hands were steady as she picked up the phone. Steadier than they'd been in years. She dialed the number for her attorney. Left a message, clear.com/direct. I need to make some changes to my estate plan, as soon as possible. When she hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in 18 years. Not relief, exactly, not satisfaction, but something close to dignity. The kind that comes from finally understanding that love doesn't require you to disappear. That sacrifice doesn't mean erasure. That there's a difference between selflessness and self-destruction. The girl had made her choice. Now she would make hers. The attorney's office smelled like leather and old wood. Heavy desk, diplomas on the wall. The kind of place where serious decisions are made and documented in language that can't be undone with a conversation or an apology. She sat across from him with the folder open between them. He was older, kind eyes. He'd handled her husband's estate years ago. Knew the history. Knew the girl wasn't hers by blood but had been hers in every other way. You're sure about this? He asked gently. She nodded. I'm sure. He slid the documents across the desk. Page after page of legal language that all said the same thing. Remove her name. Take her off the deed to the house. Remove her from the life insurance policy. The investment accounts. The retirement fund. Everything. She'll still get the personal items. He explained. Photos, mementos, things that belonged to her father. But the financial assets, the property, those will go to the charities you've specified. That's what I want. And you understand this is permanent. Once these documents are signed and notarized, changing them back requires her consent. I understand. He handed her a pen, expensive, weighted. The kind that makes you aware of the gravity of what you're signing. She signed the first page, then the second, then the third, her signature steady, no hesitation, no second thoughts, just clarity. The kind that comes after 18 years of hoping for something that was never going to arrive on its own. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been easier, cleaner. Revenge would have come with anger, with satisfaction, with the bitter pleasure of making someone hurt the way they'd hurt you. This was something else. Something quieter. This was boundaries. This was recognizing that love without respect becomes a wound that never heals. This was understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone to take you for granted. She thought about the girl, wondered if she'd notice, if she'd care. Probably not, at least not at first. The girl was young. Healthy. Death and inheritance were abstract concepts, things that happen to other people, to old people, not something to worry about when you're 22 with your whole life ahead of you. But eventually, she'd need to know. Eventually there'd be a conversation, not now, not yet, but someday. And when that day came, maybe the girl would finally understand. Maybe she'd finally see what she'd lost by never seeing what she had. The attorney gathered the signed documents, placed them in a folder, sealed it. I'll file these by the end of the week. You'll receive copies for your records. Thank you. Can I ask you something? He leaned back in his chair, fatherly, concerned. Have you talked to her about how you're feeling? No. Maybe you should, before you let this become permanent. Maybe she doesn't realize because she's never had to. The words came out sharper than she intended. She softened her voice. I've spent 18 years making sure she never had to realize, never had to worry, never had to wonder if someone would be there. And now I need her to learn what it feels like when someone isn't. He nodded slowly. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we teach by stepping back. Sometimes they're the only lessons that work. She left the office and sat in her car for a long time, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. She didn't feel victorious, didn't feel vindicated, just tired and sad and strangely free. Free from the weight of expectations that would never be met. Free from the hope that was slowly killing her. Free from the belief that if she just gave a little more, sacrificed a little more, loved a little more, it would finally be enough. She'd done enough. More than enough. And now she was done. The drive home was quiet. She turned on the radio but couldn't focus on the music. Her mind kept circling back to the documents, to the signatures, to the permanence of what she'd just done. Part of her wanted to call the attorney. Tell him to wait. Tell him she'd made a mistake. But she knew she hadn't. This wasn't a mistake. This was self-preservation. This was drawing a line in the sand and saying, no more. Not like this. At home, she made tea, sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd sat just days ago, staring at graduation photos, feeling herself disappear. But now something was different. She was still there, still present, but no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer bending herself into shapes that would never fit. She thought about calling the girl, telling her, but what would she say? I've removed you from my will, because you forgot to invite me to your graduation. It sounded petty when reduced to words. Sounded like an old woman throwing a tantrum because her feelings were hurt. But it wasn't that. It was so much more than that. It was 18 years of being invisible. 18 years of love given and never returned. 18 years of showing up for someone who'd stopped showing up for her. The graduation was just the final proof. The confirmation of what she'd known but hadn't wanted to admit, that she could give everything and still not matter. That blood was thicker than sacrifice. That the girl would always see her as the woman who married her father, not the woman who raised her. She finished her tea, washed the cup, put it in the drainer. Simple tasks, normal tasks, life going on the way life does, even when everything inside feels different. Her phone sat on the counter, silent, no calls, no texts, no thank you for everything or wish you could have been there or even sorry I forgot to tell you. Just silence. The same silence she'd been living with for years but was only now allowing herself to really hear. She picked up the phone, not to call, not to text, just to hold, to remind herself that connection was a choice, that relationships required effort from both sides, that love, real love, couldn't survive on one person's devotion alone. She set it back down, face up this time, not hiding from it, not avoiding what it might or might not show her, just accepting that this was where they were, where they'd always been, really. She'd just been too busy hoping to see it clearly. The evening stretched ahead, empty, quiet, but not in the suffocating way it had been before. Now the quiet felt like space, like possibility, like room to breathe without holding herself in shapes meant to please someone else. She'd made her decision, signed the papers, drew the boundary. Now came the harder part, living with it. Letting the girl live without the safety net she'd spent 18 years weaving, watching what happened when absence taught the lessons presence never could. 3 months passed. Summer stretched into fall. The girl moved to her new city, started law school, posted pictures of her new apartment, new friends, new life. Everything bright and exciting and full of possibility. She saw it all from a distance. Instagram stories, Facebook posts, the carefully curated highlights of a life that didn't include her. She didn't comment, didn't like, just watched. A ghost in the girl's digital life, the same way she'd become a ghost in her real one. The bills stopped coming. No more tuition. No more housing fees. No more frantic calls about textbooks or medical copays or unexpected expenses. The girl had her scholarship, her stipend. She was financially independent for the first time in her life. She wondered if the girl noticed the difference, if she felt the absence of the safety net that had always been there. Probably not yet. 3 months wasn't long enough to need rescuing. Wasn't long enough for real problems to surface. But they would. They always did. The first call came in October. Late at night, her phone buzzing on the nightstand, pulling her from sleep. She looked at the screen. The girl's name. First time she'd called in months. She almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But old habits die hard. Hello, hey. The girl's voice sounded different. Smaller, tired. Sorry to call so late. I just, I have a problem. What's wrong? My car broke down, like completely dead. The mechanic says it needs a new transmission. It's going to be $3,000. Silence. The girl waiting, expecting. The way she always had. That's a lot of money, she said carefully. I know, I don't have it. My stipend barely covers rent and food. I was hoping, I know it's a lot to ask, but could you? No. The word hung between them. Sharp, final. What? I can't help you with that. What do you mean you can't? You helped with everything before. I thought you thought what? That I'd always be there to fix things. That you could go months without calling and then show up when you needed money. The girl's voice hardened. That's not fair, isn't it? She sat up in bed, wide awake now. When's the last time you called, just to talk? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you thanked me for anything? I'm grateful. You know I'm grateful. Do I? Because I wasn't invited to your graduation. Wasn't even told the date. Found out on Instagram like a stranger. Silence on the other end. Long. Uncomfortable. I'm sorry about that. It was complicated. I had limited tickets and I didn't make the list. After 18 years, after everything, I didn't make the list. It wasn't personal. It was the most personal thing you could have done. Her voice cracked, just slightly. You erased me from the biggest moment of your life. And now you're calling because you need something. Do you understand how that feels? I said, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix 18 years of being invisible. Another silence. Then the girl's voice, defensive now, hurt. I can't believe you're making this about you. I have a real problem. I need help. And you single quotes what? Punishing me. I'm not punishing you. I'm teaching you something I should have taught you years ago. That people aren't bottomless wells you can draw from without ever giving back. That love requires reciprocity. That showing up matters. This is ridiculous. I'm your daughter. The word landed like a slap. She closed her eyes. You've never called me that before. What daughter? You've never called yourself my daughter. Not once in 18 years. The girl hesitated. I didn't think. I thought you'd be offended. That you'd think I was trying to replace my mom. I raised you. From 4 months old, I was there for every fever, every heartbreak, every milestone. I didn't need the title, but I needed to be seen. And you never saw me. That's not true. Then where was I at graduation? Where was I in your life these last 4 years? Where am I now, except when you need money? The girl started to cry, soft at first, then harder. I don't know what you want from me. I wanted you to think of me. Just once, without needing something first. So you're just, what, cutting me off? After everything. I'm not cutting you off. I'm stepping back. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like a difference. Maybe that's the point. The girl's voice turned cold. Fine, I'll figure it out myself. I always do. Do you? Or have you always had someone figuring it out for you? The call ended. No goodbye, just silence. Dead air. She sat in the dark, phone in her hand, heart pounding. Part of her wanted to call back, to apologize, to wire the money and make it all okay. But she didn't, couldn't, because making it okay now would only make it worse later. The girl sold the car. She saw the post online. By old friend. Time for a new chapter. No mention of why. No mention of what happened. November came. Then December. The girl didn't call, didn't text, not even to ask about Thanksgiving or Christmas plans. Just silence. The kind that said, if you're not useful, you're not necessary. She spent Thanksgiving alone again. Christmas too. The house felt emptier than it ever had. But the emptiness was different now. Before, it was loneliness. Now, it was space. Room to grieve what she'd lost. Room to heal from what she'd endured. She wondered how the girl was managing. If law school was as hard as everyone said, if she'd made friends, if she was happy. She wondered but didn't ask, didn't reach out, because reaching out now would undo everything, would tell the girl that boundaries didn't matter, that she could ignore someone for months and still expect them to be there. Winter settled in, cold, quiet, long nights alone with her thoughts. She wondered if this was it, if this was how it ended. 18 years of love reduced to silence and distance, and a lesson that might be too painful to ever heal from. But some lessons don't heal, they just teach. And sometimes teaching is the most loving thing you can do, even when it breaks your heart to do it. January arrived cold and unforgiving. The girl's first semester of law school was over. Finals finished, grades posted. She'd done well, according to the brief update on social media. Dean's list, it should have made her proud. Instead, it just reminded her how little she knew about the girl's life anymore. The girl had moved apartments over winter break, downsizing, saving money. She'd posted photos of the packing process, boxes stacked high, bags of donations, the casual chaos of a move. And then, 3 days after New Year's, her phone rang. The girl's number? She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello, I found something." The girl's voice was quiet, shaky. "I was packing Dad's old things, the box you gave me when I went to college. I never really went through it, but I was moving, and I thought maybe I should, and ... double quotes." She trailed off, breathing hard, like she'd been running. Or crying. "What did you find?" "A letter. He wrote me a letter. Before he died, it was sealed. My name on it. I don't know how I missed it before." Her chest tightened. She remembered that box. Had packed it herself years ago. His watch, his favorite books, photos, things she thought the girl should have. She didn't know about a letter. What did it say? The girl's voice cracked. He knew he was dying, and he wrote me this letter, and he said if anything ever happened to him, I should trust you, that you'd take care of me, that you'd always been there, that you loved me like I was yours." Silence. Heavy, full of everything unsaid for 18 years. He wrote, "She's not your mother by birth, but she's your mother in every way that matters. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever take her for granted. Because people like her, people who choose to love you, are rarer than people who have to." The girl was crying now. Really crying. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and broken. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what he asked me to do. I forgot what you did. I forgot everything." She closed her eyes, felt her own tears start. "You were young. That's not an excuse. I was old enough to know better, old enough to see, but I didn't want to see. It was easier to just ... take. To assume you'd always be there. To treat you like furniture, like something that just existed without ever needing anything back. You were grieving. So were you." The girl's voice broke completely. "You lost him too. And I never asked. Never wondered. Never thought about what it cost you to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep loving me when I gave you nothing back. I didn't need anything back. Yes, you did. You needed to be seen. You needed to matter. And I made you invisible." A long pause. "The graduation. You weren't there because I didn't invite you. And I didn't invite you because I didn't think you'd care. I didn't think it mattered to you. How could it not matter? To you? How could it not matter? Because you never said anything. You never asked for anything. You were just ... there. Always there. And I thought that meant you didn't need anything. That you were fine. That this was just what you did. It's what I chose to do. Because I loved you. I know that now." Reading his words. Reading what he saw. What he knew. What he trusted. The girl's breath hitched. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. For the graduation. For the calls I didn't make. For the years I wasted not seeing what was right in front of me. For taking 18 years of love and acting like it was nothing." She didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there were words big enough to hold this moment. To bridge the gap between years of hurt and this single phone call. "I don't know how to fix this," the girl said. "I don't know if I can. But I need to try. I need you to know that I see you now. That I'm sorry, that I was wrong, about everything. I know. Can I, double quotes. The girl's voice was so small now. Like a child's, like the 4-month-old baby she'd held all those years ago. Can I come home? Not forever. Just for a weekend. Just to talk. To try. I don't deserve it. I know I don't, but I'm asking anyway. She looked around her empty house. At the quiet she'd grown used to. At the space she'd carved out for herself after years of making room for someone else. Part of her wanted to say no. To protect herself. To keep the boundary she'd fought so hard to build. But love doesn't work that way. Real love. The kind that survives erosion and neglect and years of being invisible. Doesn't quit just because it finally has permission to. Yes, she said. Come home. The girl arrived on a Friday evening. She looked different. Older. Thinner. Like law school was eating her alive. She stood on the porch holding a small bag, looking uncertain in a way she never had before. They hugged. Long. Tight. The kind of hug that says everything words can't. They sat at the kitchen table. The same table where so much had happened. Where she'd learned about the cancer. Where she'd stared at graduation photos. Where she'd made the choice to step back. Now they sat across from each other with tea and silence and the weight of 18 years between them. I read the letter 3 times, the girl said 10 too. And every time, I saw something else. Something I'd missed. Something I'd ignored. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Set it on the table between them. He loved you so much. He trusted you completely. And I betrayed that. I betrayed him, and I betrayed you. You didn't betray anyone. You were just young. I was old enough to know better. Old enough to do better. The girl's hands shook. The car, when it broke down. When you said no, I was so angry. I thought you were being cruel, punishing me. But you weren't. You were teaching me, and I needed to be taught. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I know. You were trying to save me. From becoming someone who takes and never gives back. From becoming someone who only sees people when she needs something. The girl looked up, eyes red. Did it work? She reached across the table, took the girl's hand. You're here? That's what matters. They talked until late. About everything. About the years of silence. About the hurt. About the love that survived it all. About what came next. Not promises. Not guarantees. Just honesty. Raw and painful and real. The girl stayed the weekend. They cooked together. Walked together. Sat in comfortable silence together. And when it was time to leave, the girl hugged her again. Longer this time. I love you, the girl whispered. First time she'd ever said it. I should have said it years ago. But I'm saying it now. I love you. She held on. Let herself feel it. I love you too. The months that followed weren't perfect. Healing never is. But they were different. Better. Real. The girl called once a week. Not because she needed something. Just because. Just to talk. About law school. About her day. About nothing and everything. The calls were short sometimes. 10 minutes. 15. But they were consistent. They were chosen. She started receiving texts. Random ones. Saw this and thought of you. A photo of a sunset. A quote from a book. A meme that made her laugh. Small things. The kind of things people send when they're thinking about someone. When someone matters. In March, the girl came home for spring break. Not because she had to. Not because she had nowhere else to go. But because she wanted to. I miss home, she'd said on the phone. I miss you. They fell into an easy rhythm. Cooking together, watching old movies. Talking about things that mattered and things that didn't. The girl asked questions. About her life. About her work. About how she was doing. Really doing. Not just the surface answer. The truth underneath. Are you lonely? The girl asked one night. They were sitting on the couch. Tea cooling on the coffee table. The house dark except for one lamp. She thought about lying. About saying she was fine. That she'd gotten used to it. But the girl deserved honesty. Sometimes yes, I'm sorry for leaving you alone so long. For not seeing what that must have felt like. You're young. You're supposed to leave. Supposed to build your own life. But I should have brought you with me. Not physically, but here. The girl touched her chest, her heart. I should have kept you here. You have me now. Do I? The girl's eyes were serious, searching. Really? After everything? She reached over, squeezed the girl's hand. You're here, aren't you? You came back. That's what matters. In April, the girl called with news. She'd been offered a summer internship. Prestigious firm, good money. It's in the city, she said. But I was thinking, what if I came home on weekends? Would that be okay? Would you want that? I'd love that. Really, you're not just saying it. Really. The weekends became a pattern. The girl would arrive Friday night, tired from the week. They'd have dinner, talk, catch up. Saturday mornings, they'd have coffee together, take walks, run errands. Normal things, family things. Sunday afternoons, the girl would pack up and head back. But before she left, she'd hug her. Long, tight. Love you, she'd say, every time. Like she was making up for all the times she hadn't. Love you too. One Saturday in June, they were in the kitchen, making dinner together. The girl was chopping vegetables. She was stirring sauce. The radio played soft in the background. And the girl said, quietly, almost to herself, this feels like when I was little. When Dad was still alive. When we were a family. She looked up. We're still a family. The girl's eyes filled. I didn't think, after everything I did, I didn't think I still got to have this. Family isn't something you lose by making mistakes. It's something you strengthen by fixing them. Did I fix it? Can you forgive me? She set down the spoon, turned to face the girl fully. There's nothing to forgive. You were young. You were hurting. You were human. We both were. But I hurt you. I know I did. You did. But hurt isn't permanent. Not if both people choose to heal. The girl put down the knife, crossed the kitchen, wrapped her arms around her, and cried. Not the guilty crying from months ago, but relief. Release. The kind of crying that washes clean. She held her, stroked her hair, the way she used to when the girl was small and scared. It's okay, she whispered. We're okay. In July, they celebrated her birthday together. The girl drove home with a cake. Homemade. Slightly lopsided. I'm not great at baking, she admitted. But I wanted to try. It was the best birthday she'd had in years. Not because of the cake or the simple gift, but because the girl was there, present, choosing to be there. They talked about the will one evening. The girl brought it up. I know you changed it. Your attorney's office sent me a notice. About being removed. I'm sorry you found out that way. Don't be. I deserved it. More than that. I deserved worse. It wasn't about what you deserved. It was about teaching you that people aren't infinite, that love needs to be mutual. Did it work? The lesson. She smiled. You're here, aren't you? The girl nodded. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Not like before. I'm not saying I'll move back home. I have my life, my career. But I'm not disappearing again. I won't let myself. I believe you. Can I ask you something? The girl looked nervous. Would you ever? Would you consider changing it back? The will. She paused. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she wanted the girl to understand it. The will isn't what matters. What matters is that you learned why it had to change. That you understand what you almost lost wasn't money or property. It was us. This, the relationship we're rebuilding. I understand. I do. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know I understand. You don't have to spend your life proving anything. Just be present. That's all I ever wanted. Summer faded into fall. The girl went back to school. But this time, the distance felt different. Not like abandonment, like space, healthy space, the kind adults need. They talked regularly, visited when they could, and when they couldn't, they stayed connected in small ways. Messages, photos. The girl sent flowers on random Tuesdays. Just because, the card would say. In October, the girl called. I'm applying for jobs, for after graduation. There's one here in the city, close to home, not too close, but close enough for Sunday dinners. Would you want that? I'd want whatever makes you happy. You make me happy. Being near you. Finally knowing you. Really knowing you. then yes, I'd want that. They'd lost years. That was true. Years they couldn't get back. But what they had now was real, built on honesty and effort, and the choice to show up, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of love. The kind that survives neglect and hurt and time. The kind that's stronger because it almost broke. The kind that knows its value because it almost lost it. The girl came home for Thanksgiving, set the table, helped cook, and when they sat down to eat, she reached across and took her hand. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on me, for teaching me what love actually means." She squeezed back. "Thank you for learning. Some stories don't end with fireworks, they end with quiet understanding. With two people sitting across a table, sharing a meal, knowing they almost lost each other but didn't. This is one of those stories. The woman who raised a child that wasn't hers by blood, learned something it takes most people a lifetime to understand. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's martyrdom. And martyrdom doesn't teach anyone anything, except how to take without giving back. She didn't remove the girl from her will out of cruelty. She did it out of necessity. Out of the deep, painful understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone feel your absence. Let them stumble. Let them struggle. Let them learn what they had by experiencing what it's like to lose it. The girl learned that presence isn't automatic. That love isn't infinite when it's only flowing one direction. That the people who choose you deserve to be chosen back. Not just when it's convenient. Not just when you need something. But always. Consistently. With intention. They rebuilt what was broken. Not perfectly. Not without scars. But honestly. With effort. With the understanding that relationships survive not because they're easy, but because both people decide they're worth the work. The woman still thinks about those 18 years sometimes. The invisible years. The years she gave everything and received so little back. They hurt. They'll always hurt. But they also taught her something invaluable. That her love was real, even when it wasn't recognized. That her sacrifice mattered even when it wasn't acknowledged. That she was enough, even when she felt like nothing. And the girl. She thinks about them too. About all the moments she missed. All the times she should have said thank you. Should have said I love you. Should have seen the woman standing right in front of her, holding her life together with quiet, unnoticed hands. She can't get those years back. Can't undo the hurt. Can't erase the graduation that happened without the one person who should have been in the front row. But she can do better now. Can show up now. Can love with intention now. That's what forgiveness looks like. Not forgetting. Not pretending it didn't happen. But choosing to build something new on top of what broke. Choosing to honor the past by doing better in the present. The woman learned that love doesn't require you to disappear. That sacrifice doesn't mean erasure. That you can be selfless without being invisible. That boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges. They teach people how to cross over correctly. With respect. With reciprocity. With awareness that someone is meeting them halfway. The girl learned that family isn't just who raised you. It's who you choose to honor. Who you choose to remember. Who you choose to love back. That being young isn't an excuse for being careless. That grief doesn't justify cruelty. That taking someone for granted isn't passive. It's active harm. They learn together that some relationships have to break before they can heal. That sometimes you have to lose someone to understand what having them really meant. That absence is a teacher patience could never be. Today, they talk every week. Visit when they can. Share meals and memories and the comfortable silence of people who know each other's stories. The woman is no longer invisible. The girl is no longer careless. They're just two people who love each other. Imperfectly, honestly, with the hard-won wisdom of those who almost lost each other and chose not to. The will was changed back eventually. Not because the girl asked, but because the woman decided. Because the lesson had been learned. Because the relationship had been earned. Because love, when it's real and reciprocal, deserves to be honored in every way possible. Some people spend their whole lives waiting to be seen. She stopped waiting and started teaching. And in the end, that made all the difference. Because the truth is, love that never demands anything becomes love that means nothing. Love that bends without breaking is beautiful, but love that breaks and rebuilds, that's the kind that lasts forever. Maybe you've loved someone who only learned your value when you were gone. Maybe you've been the one who took someone for granted until their absence taught you what their presence meant. Either way, you know this truth: some lessons only arrive through loss. If this story touched something in you, share your experience in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Leave a like if you believe that real love requires courage, not just devotion. Subscribe for more stories that honor the complicated, beautiful truth of loving imperfectly and learning constantly. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is acknowledge that we're all still learning how to love better. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling. Your presence means everything.